Welcome, dear witches, wizards and curious muggles alike, to a tale older than Wandwood and fiercer than a Hungarian horntail in mating season. Today we unravel the fire-wreathed threads of one of the most ancient and enigmatic creatures in all magical history, the dragon. These beasts, fierce and majestic, have stalked the tapestry of the wizarding world since time immemorial. Their roars echo through forgotten valleys, their scales shimmer in the vaults of Gringotts, and their names are whispered in awe from the highlands of Scotland to the icy steppes of Russia. This is not merely a tale of monstrous might, but a deep exploration into how dragons have shaped, scarred, and soared through the wizarding age. To begin with dragons is to begin with legend itself. Long before wands were crafted with phoenix feather cores, before the Goblin rebellions cracked wizarding society in twain, dragons ruled the wildest edges of magical territory. According to Newt Scamander's Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, dragons are classified as XXXXX by the Ministry of Magic, denoting their extreme danger and the impossibility of domesticating even a single specimen. But what this classification omits is their cultural magnitude. Dragons are not merely beasts, they are keepers of magical inheritance, woven into ancient spells, bloodlines, and wizarding ideologies. They are feared, yes, but revered just as often. For every dragon slain by a foolish hero, 10 more are praised in song, in wand lore, and in whispered tales by Hearthlight. Dragons in wizarding history do not exist in isolation. Their influence cuts across every magical continent. The Romanian Dragon Sanctuary, often romanticized thanks to Charlie Weasley's occupation there, is a modern effort to contain and protect these dwindling wonders. But centuries earlier, in medieval Europe, dragons were hunted by wizards hungry for glory, or simply afraid of fire. Tales such as that of the warlock Egbert the Egregious, who claimed to have defeated a Welsh green using only a gobstone and a conjured rainstorm, are likely exaggerated, though perhaps not impossible, given the eccentricity of spellcraft in those days. One cannot overlook the Eastern traditions either, where Chinese fireballs were viewed as omens of spiritual potency and trained to perform ceremonial dances under the control of highly skilled spellbinders. These creatures were not just beasts, they were bridges between the magical and the divine. Yet it is in the Tri-Wizard Tournament of 1994 that dragons stepped once more into the center of wizarding consciousness. When Harry Potter faced the Hungarian horntail, perhaps the most vicious breed in recorded history, he didn't just face a creature, he faced an echo of every dragon fear that had ever lived in magical memory. That horntail's glare mirrored the harsh truth of magic itself. Power without compassion can devour. But dragons, paradoxically, are not malevolent by nature. Their violence is territorial, not cruel. Their flames born of instinct, not hatred. In truth, they are mirrors. They show us the fire we each harbor inside, sometimes protective, sometimes destructive. It's why even now Gringotts relies on a blind dragon to guard its most ancient vaults. No enchantment says trespassers beware, quite like a chained, half-made beast bred for war. Dragons also illumine the economic and magical frameworks of the wizarding world. Dragon Heartstring, a core prized in wand-making, binds spells with fierce loyalty and raw power. Ollivander himself noted that wands of this nature tend toward the bold, the impulsive, and the powerful, a reflection of the beast it came from. Then there is the highly regulated trade of dragon hide, used in protective clothing, and their blood, discovered to have 12 distinct magical properties. Albus Dumbledore himself contributed to this research, a rare intersection where scholarship meets scales, but with such high demand comes inevitable tension. Smuggling rings, black market auctions, and cursed dragon eggs are not rare in the underbelly of Knockturn Alley. Even in our own age, the ethics of dragon exploitation remain hotly debated within the Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures. Though dragons are most often glimpsed as adversaries in tales of magical valor, their presence in folklore hints at something far more complex. In the tales of Beedle the Bard, the creatures are curiously absent, an omission that scholars have pondered for years. Was it caution, reverence, or was it simply that even fairy tale bards feared summoning dragonfire upon their parchment? Regardless, oral tradition, particularly among goblin tribes and centaurs, paints dragons not merely as predators, but as elemental forces, beings to be respected, bargained with, or fled from. One centauric legend from the Forbidden Forest claims that dragons are the earthly children of Pyros, a star that fell in rage during the age before wands. Though unsubstantiated by the Department of Mysteries, the tale reminds us dragons were always more than beasts, they were portents. Indeed, even wizarding architecture has borne their mark. Gringotts Wizarding Bank, with its dragon-guarded vaults, is perhaps the most visible example, but even Hogwarts itself is rumoured to be protected by defensive enchantments laced with dragon essence, particularly in the oldest stone-laid halls beneath the castle. Some wizarding historians speculate that Salazar Slytherin may have dabbled in draconic studies, alongside his more infamous affinity for serpents. There is, after all, an enduring rumour that the basilisk was not the only ancient beast once hidden beneath the castle. Could a dragon have once slumbered beneath the Black Lake, chained in forgotten spells? The very idea seems absurd, until one considers how little even the most seasoned headmasters know about Hogwarts' foundations. Beyond the stone and steel of civilization, dragons have long influenced bloodlines and magical heritage. It is no coincidence that powerful magical families, such as the Malfoys or Lestranges, boast ancestral ties to dragon handlers and slayers of dubious merit. Dragon slaying, despite its brutality, became a status symbol during the early days of the Statute of Secrecy. Pure-blood wizards seeking acclaim or social leverage would often boast of conquering dragons as proof of magical prowess. Yet few of these braggarts survived to see old age. Real dragon slaying, unlike the bard-sung versions, rarely ended in triumph. Often, the hunter became the hunted. The scale-laden skeletons scattered across the Carpathian passes are grim reminders that dragons do not die easily and never die silently. Yet, not all interactions between dragons and wizards have been defined by bloodshed. In parts of Scandinavia and Iceland, cooperative magic was once practiced between wizard clans and nesting Norwegian ridgebacks. It is said that during harsh winters, entire wizarding villages would survive only by warming their hearths with dragon fire, shared through ritual offerings of charmed elk bones and fireproof salmon. These practices were outlawed by the International Confederation of Wizards in the late 1600s, following the Fjord incident, when a juvenile ridgeback became enchanted by a village's child and refused to return to the wild, nearly exposing the magical world to local muggles. Still, some magical communities in Northern Europe speak of firewalkers, witches who can calm a dragon's fury with ancient lullabies taught only in dream. No exploration of draconic lore would be complete without addressing the ethical dilemma of their captivity. The blind Ukrainian ironbelly beneath Gringotts is perhaps the most heart-wrenching example. Though trained to respond only to clankers, metallic instruments of control, it was Harry Potter and his companions who broke its chains and rode its desperate ascent into the sky during their raid on the bank. That dragon's freedom was both literal and symbolic, an echo of a larger truth, that even the fiercest magic can be corrupted when chained by greed. As Hermione Granger later reflected in her private essays for the Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures, dragons are not weapons, they are wonders, and when treated as such, they remind us of our own magical origins, wild, immense, and untamed. As we delve further into dragon history, it becomes impossible to avoid the darker chapters, the ones inked in ash and blood. For while dragons are by nature neutral creatures, neither evil nor good, their power has often been bent to serve wizarding ambition. Nowhere is this more evident than in the annals of dark magic, where dragons have been bound, tortured, and exploited for war. During Grindelwald's first rise to power, whispers circulated of wyvern-like creatures, half-tamed, half-maddened, used in battlefields across Eastern Europe. Though wyverns are not true dragons, their bloodlines are believed to have diverged from Hebridean blacks millennia ago, and Grindelwald's willingness to warp that lineage speaks to the broader horror of weaponized magical creatures. Voldemort, by contrast, showed less direct interest in dragons, but demonstrated a similar ruthlessness. During the Second Wizarding War, a number of rare dragon species mysteriously vanished from protected reserves across Romania and the Urals. Though never publicly confirmed, it is strongly believed by the Department of Magical Law Enforcement that some were used in underground dueling rings among Death Eater sympathizers, a practice disturbingly reminiscent of Muggle-era blood sports. Worse still, some theorize that dragon blood was used in the development of cursed potions potent brews requiring the sacrifice of magical creatures to fuel their unholy effects. While no samples remain, or are permitted to remain, even the suggestion has sent shudders through the Committee for the Disposal of Dangerous Creatures. And yet, despite their exploitation, dragons have always resisted domination. No unforgivable curse has been known to fully control them, and even the most powerful wizards have failed to master their will. Horace Slughorn once remarked that trying to tame a dragon was like trying to convince Peeves to sit still, only far more likely to result in death. Even in captivity, dragons retain an eerie dignity. They do not beg, they do not weep. When Harry Potter looked into the eyes of the chained Ironbelly at Gringotts, he didn't see hatred, he saw endurance. A creature born in the age of mountains, forced to live beneath marble and gold, still dreaming of sky. The resistance of dragons to subjugation may be one reason they feature so prominently in ancient wand lore and prophecy. In the secret archives of the Department of Mysteries, rarely spoken of and never officially acknowledged, there exists a scroll known as the Firebone Fragment. Believed to have been penned by a seer of the early Byzantine magical courts, it speaks of a last flame bearer who will awaken the sky serpent bound in the earth, heralding a new age of elemental magic. Though the metaphor is opaque, some unspeakables have interpreted this as a reference to dragonkind and to a magical era when wizards and dragons stood as equals, not captor and captive. Is it myth? Almost certainly. But in the wizarding world, myths have teeth, often quite literal ones. Dragons also bear symbolic weight beyond magic. In the House of Ravenclaw, the dragon is said to represent knowledge pursued through danger. In some lesser-known family crests, such as the McFusties, traditional dragon keepers of Scotland, the dragon stands proudly not as a beast, but as a brother in arms. The McFusty clan, who've long watched over the Hebridean black population on the Outer Hebrides, speak to their dragons in a dialect of ancient Gaelic fused with Parseltongue inflection. Whether this tongue is inherited or enchanted is unknown, but their symbiosis has inspired generations of magizoologists to believe that the key to understanding dragons lies not in taming them, but in listening. When wizards speak of dragons, they do not merely speak of scales and flame. They speak of something older, deeper, more instinctual. To encounter a dragon in the wild is to face not just a creature, but a reflection of raw magical force, untamed, unyielding, and fiercely alive. It's why the dragon so often appears in wizarding dreams, in prophetic visions, and in the deepest corners of magical imagination. In the earliest divination texts unearthed from Alexandria's lost magical quarter, dragons are painted into star charts and dreamscapes, always circling crossroads or thresholds, symbols of transformation, of inner fire reborn. Albus Dumbledore once mused that understanding dragons may not be necessary to defeat darkness, but it is essential to surviving oneself. It is a rare quote, found scribbled in the margins of an early draft of his memoirs, and it reveals something the headmaster often hinted at. Dragons represent more than danger, they represent power, unrefined. In a way, dragons and dark magic spring from the same well. Both tempt the wizard with a promise of greatness, but where dark magic demands surrender, dragons demand respect. One cannot bend a dragon to one's will without breaking something essential, and what breaks a dragon cannot be mended. Not with any charm known to wand or wandless wizard. In this light, dragons have often marked magical thresholds. When Harry Potter stood before the Hungarian Horntail in the Triwizard Tournament, it was not merely a test of survival, it was a rite of passage, a moment where youth burns away, and what remains is courage honed by flame. Similarly, when Hermione Granger faced the chained Ironbelly during the escape from Gringotts, her instincts were not to subdue it, but to set it free. That act of compassion under pressure is perhaps the truest magic of all. The dragon became not just an escape route, but a liberation of the creature and of themselves. Wizards often record great magical acts in terms of incantation or intent, but in that moment the spell was not cast by wand, but by choice. And choice is at the heart of every dragon encounter. Do we fear the fire or step into it? Do we try to master nature or walk alongside it? These questions echo through the magical disciplines most aligned with dragons. In wand lore, as mentioned, dragon heartstring produces the most powerful and volatile cores. Garrick Ollivander, once explained that wands with this core tend to learn quickly and to act decisively. They are not subtle, but they are fiercely loyal to the wizard who earns them. Not commands, not coercion, loyalty. The same loyalty that ancient wizarding tribes once forged with dragons through blood pacts, fire oaths, and silent rites beneath burning skies. In some corners of magical philosophy, particularly among wandless practitioners in Africa and South America, dragons are seen as symbols of self-mastery. The fire outside must be acknowledged to master the fire within. This belief gave rise to the fire trials of the Uagadou school, where students, on the cusp of adulthood, must summon a fire-dwelling spirit and confront it in silence. These spirits often take the form of miniature dragons made of smoke and ember, and can only be dispelled through steady breathing and a clear heart. It is said that those who panic are burned, those who bluff are bitten, but those who accept the flame without fear are granted a vision of their true magical path. Dragons teach wizards not just how to wield power, but how to be worthy of it. As we close our journey through Dragonkind's legacy, we find ourselves returning to a truth both simple and searing. Dragons endure. Whether buried in ancient vaults, etched in the ink of forbidden scrolls, or flying free above forgotten ranges, they remain one of the wizarding world's purest expressions of nature, unchained. Their presence reminds us that for all our magical ingenuity, our spells, potions, and politics, we are still guests in a world that answers to deeper powers with wings. And perhaps that is why dragons have never been truly forgotten, even in the age of ministry regulations, Muggle evasion tactics, and ever-shrinking wildlands. They persist at the edges of the magical world, glowing like embers in the shadows of our stories. In the tales passed from goblin to goblin around a smoking forge, in the lullabies whispered in the hidden valleys of the Carpathians, in the dreams of children at Hogwarts, tracing the silhouette of a horntail across the stars as they whisper to each other, "One day, I'll see one." To study dragons is to study fear, yes, but also freedom. They do not obey the tidy laws of wandwork or wizard kind. They blaze, they soar, they fight only when provoked and fly only when they choose. And in their refusal to be contained, dragons offer us a rare gift, the challenge to rise. Not above them, but to their level, to meet the world not with arrogance, but with awe. In the words of Newt Scamander, whose care for magical creatures never wavered, dragons are not here to be understood. They are here to remind us that magic is not just what we do, it is what we are. And that truth, perhaps, is what keeps the fire alive, not in the belly of a beast, but in the heart of every witch and wizard who dares to believe that the world still holds wonder, that there are still skies to chase, and that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is not to slay the dragon, but to set it free. And so, wherever you are, wand in hand, book in lap, or gazing out across some distant peak, remember this: dragons are watching, not to strike, not to flee, but to remind you that magic, real magic, is always just beyond the flame.